Focusing on internal elements now. So the three main internal elements that impact SEO are the content you create, the HTML and meta information that you use, and the actual architecture of your website. Now, all three of these internal website elements have a very significant impact on how well your website is going to rank on search engines. So to break it down further, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain each element specifically and talk about the positive and negative things that you can do within those elements to make an impact. And I'm going to do this in each section, where the first things that I mention are the most important, followed by their less important counterparts. So let's start off with content. So content, you've all probably heard the saying that content is king. And if you haven't heard that saying, what this means is that if you want to have a website that is successful from an SEO perspective, you need to have exceptional content that keeps readers engaged and is completely unique to what has already been done. Now, with that being said, what are the components of content that are positive? So first is quality. Search engines will look over your pages and crawl your content in an effort to see how detailed the content is, as well as how well it is written. Things to consider are the length of the article that you're writing, the use of headings and subheadings to make the content easy to follow, and spelling or grammatical errors. Number two is research. Before ever creating content, you should spend some time researching what keywords you're going to focus on, as well as reputable sources of information on the internet to link to within your content. By doing keyword research, you're going to put your blog posts or website content pages in a good position to rank, because you can find keywords that are low competition and hopefully have some decent search volume. Whenever anybody asks me what keyword tool I recommend to people who want to do proper keyword research, I always recommend Longtail Pro. And you can access a free trial of this tool by going to www.onehourprofessor.com/keyword tool. Number three is keywords. So next is the use of the actual keywords that you want to be ranked for within the content that you're writing. Now, please realize that I'm not talking about repeating a keyword that you're trying to rank for over and over and over again, but instead I'm talking about using those keywords as a guide to steer your content. From my experience, all that you really need to do is understand what your keyword targets are before writing your post or page, and while writing, keep those keywords in your mind and let them happen organically. Next is engagement. So determining engagement for search engines is something that has definitely evolved over time. But now search engines look at the average time spent on the page, how many people bounced from the page, or they came in on that page and then they left your website without clicking on any other pages. And finally, it looks at the returning visitors to your website. And then lastly, in the positive elements for content, we have the freshness. So one thing that people don't always realize is that stories that are very timely and geared towards current events will typically rank pretty well just because they are timely and relevant. This doesn't mean that every blog post you have should focus on a current event, but even the fact that you publish a blog post about a particular topic today is going to give you a little bit more of an edge over a blog post that someone else published a year ago on the exact same topic. So next are some of the negative factors that can happen with content, or some of the negative things that you can do in relation to your content to hurt yourself with SEO. And starting off here, we have shallow content. So if you have content that is very short and not an in-depth post and not very useful information, it's likely that the search engines are going to recognize that and they're going to penalize you for that. And after that, we have ads. So if your website pages are inundated with way too many ad units, this can also work against you, especially if those ad units are considered above the fold. This doesn't mean that you can't have ads on your website. In fact, as we all know, most businesses rely on ads to help stay in business, but it does mean that you shouldn't have the top of your website pages covered with 5 or 6 ad units in an effort to trick the user into clicking on them. Next, we move on to the HTML and meta information. So when we talk about the HTML and meta information, we're focused more on content that is primarily for search engines, although readers can see this information as well. So starting off with the positive factors here, we have page title tags. So the focus with your page title tag is to explain what your content is on the page in under 60 characters. While creating the page title tag, you also want to make sure that you include the keyword targets for that page within the title tag itself. By doing so, you're going to let the reader who is on the search engine see those keywords they are searching for in the actual title tag. But you also signal to the search engine that the keyword is in the title tag, which to a search engine will signify relevance. Next is the meta description. So the meta description portion of the page is very useful to a person who is researching on the internet because it is shown in the search engine results. On a search engine page, this is the sentence below the title tag, which explains in 155 characters or less what a web page is about. Number 3 are the headers. So on the web pages, the headings within the page describe various sections of the page. While creating headers, you need to focus on making sure that the keyword is included where appropriate and have headers that are relevant to the topics being discussed on the web page. Next is structured data. So many people don't even know what structured data is, but it is helpful from an SEO perspective if someone takes the time to incorporate it into their website. Structured data is typically for e-commerce sites or for things like recipes, events, reviews, etc. Now, although we can't cover this in great detail here, structured data is a way of letting search engines know in a very systematic way what the content on your pages of your website is all about. It goes beyond page title tags and meta descriptions, and it really has specific variables that the search engines look at, which are filled with relevant data to show the search engine exactly what the page is all about. Now let's move on to the negative factors of HTML and meta information, or the things that you can do in these areas to hurt yourself. First off is keyword stuffing. If the content that you have on a particular page consistently repeats your target keyword in an unnatural manner, that's considered keyword stuffing. Next, we have hidden keywords. So this is one of the older tactics that black hat marketing SEOs used to take. But an example of this is changing the text to white on a web page that has a white background. By doing so, human beings, they're not able to see the text, but the search engines do. And next we're going to move on to architecture. So having the correct website architecture in place is absolutely paramount in order to be ranked highly in SEO. When Google and other search engines were created, their main focus was always to bring the best and most in-depth content to search engine result pages so that the user had the best experience. One of the biggest things that can hurt the user experience is a poorly designed website or a website that loads very slowly. Now let's talk about the positive factors of architecture, the things that can help you. First is the ability to crawl a website. So is it possible for a search engine to quickly and easily crawl your website through the use of sitemaps and clear link structures throughout? It's one thing to create a website, and it's another thing to make sure that your website is easy to crawl. By default, most websites really shouldn't have an issue with this, but if you accidentally have no follow or no index tags, it could become a huge problem. And number 2 is duplicate content. So sometimes websites have duplicate content throughout because they have feeds that are aggregated on various pages or other types of ways that the content gets repeated. If that is the case, it's important to utilize canonical tags in an effort to reduce the search engine's chances of finding duplicate content, and it allows the website owner to direct the bots that crawl the website to the correct places. Number 3 is the site speed. So if you've ever been to a website that is extremely slow, you can empathize as to why search engines would penalize for this. Human beings have attention spans that are shrinking very rapidly, and in order to have a very successful website, the website owner needs to have a website that has an infrastructure in place to help it load quickly. If you're having issues with this, consider utilizing caching in order to reduce these problems. Number 4 is URLs. So nobody likes extremely long URLs that have various characters and symbols in them to describe products or services. Instead, search engines like it when the URL is descriptive to the particular keyword that is a focus of the page and is straight to the point. And number 5 is mobile. So something that most people don't even think about is the fact that a handful of their visitors are coming to the website via mobile devices. From my experience, I've seen that these numbers typically they're in the 20 to 30% range, but it can be different in your particular industry. Regardless, it's always a good idea to have a responsive website design so that people with mobile devices aren't left out when they come to your website. And now we move to the negative factors of architecture. Really, there's only one, and that is cloaking. So although I feel most people reading this will likely never come across this particular tactic, cloaking is the idea of serving one page in two different ways. The first page, which gets delivered to the search engine, is very well optimized with keywords throughout and attempts to rank highly for a particular term. The second page is what is actually shown to website visitors. And if a website is caught cloaking it, it could incur a very serious penalty as it's considered deceptive to search engines.